Day with Chris Cuomo and Allison Camerata.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your new day. It is Monday, September 25th, 8 o'clock in the East. Chris is off this morning. John Berman joins me. The show is flying.
It's flying, but we've got so much more to go.
Because we have a lot of news. So up first, President Trump stoking the flames with his war on the NFL. He's tweeting now this morning about players getting booed for kneeling during the national anthem, and once again insists that his criticism has nothing to do with race. Owners and athletes were united this weekend in defying the president, kneeling and locking arms on the field.
There are plenty of other pressing issues facing the president, maybe not a coincidence. The administration unveiling new travel restrictions targeting 8 countries, including Venezuela and North Korea. Senate Republicans revising their health care bill in hopes of winning over skeptical senators. CNN covering it all for you this morning. Want to begin with CNN's Joe Johns live at the White House. Joe.
John, the president doubling down on his rhetoric, condemning pro athletes for taking a knee during the national anthem. The president's critics questioning why he had harsher words for NFL players engaged in peaceful protests than he did for white supremacists in those violent protests in Charlottesville, Virginia earlier this year. The president says it has nothing to do with race.
I think it's very disrespectful to our country. I certainly think the owners should do something about it.
President Trump exacerbating a culture war with this unexpected rant Friday night.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired.
Despite a day of widespread backlash, the president calling again for an NFL boycott and for players who kneel during the national anthem to be fired or suspended.
You're the leader of the free world. This what you talking about.
Our leader of this country is just acting like a jerk.
I think it's very unbecoming of the office of the President of the United States to talk like that, to degrade people like that.
Dozens of NFL players taking a knee or sitting during the national anthem Sunday. Other teammates and coaches standing shoulder to shoulder on the sideline, interlocking arms.
There's no disrespect to the anthem. Everybody just locked arms in unity.
The majority of Steelers players choosing to stay in the locker room until after the anthem was over. Some singers even showing their solidarity, taking a knee along with players. The president responding, saying standing with locked arms is good, kneeling not acceptable. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell sounding off in a statement, saying divisive comments like these demonstrate an unfortunate lack of respect for the league and the players. An unfortunate lack of respect for the league and the players. Even prominent Trump backers finding it hard to defend the president.
I'm pissed off, I'll be honest with you, because I supported Donald Trump. I'm reading these comments, and it's appalling to me.
New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, Mr. Trump's friend, who gave $1 million to the president's inaugural fund, says he's deeply disappointed by the tone of Mr. Trump's comments.
I like Bob very much. He has to take his ideas and go with what he wants.
President Trump adding fuel to the fire by publicly rescinding a White House invitation to the NBA champion Golden State Warrior Steph Curry after he said he would not go.
I don't know, why he feels the need to target certain individuals. It's not what leaders do.
Curry's longtime rival LeBron James criticizing the president's response.
For him to try to use this platform to divide us even more is not something I can stand for.
I hate you!
The president's attacks on players pinning fans against each other at Sunday's games.
We love you!
And the president picked up on the theme this morning, but with a slightly different perspective, praising professional racing in part. He says, so proud of NASCAR and its supporters and fans. They won't put up with disrespecting our country or our flag. They said it loud and clear. And then this tweet also apparently on the NFL. Many people booed the players who kneeled yesterday, which is a small percentage of total. These are fans who demand respect for our flag. And just a few minutes ago, reiterating something on Twitter that he said yesterday, the issue of kneeling has nothing to do with race. It is about respect for our country, flag, and national anthem. NFL must respect this. So the president all in on the culture wars this morning, Allison and John.
Okay, thank you very much for the update, Joe. Joining us now is veteran NBC sports broadcaster Bob Costas. Bob, great to have you here on This Morning. You've seen it all in this business. What's your reaction to what happened this weekend?
The reaction is so universal, including from prominent NFL owners who have supported and donated to Trump's campaign and to his inaugural committee.
Bob Kraft.
Across the board. And you have not heard a single person within the NFL raise a voice in support of what Trump said. Rex Ryan says he's appalled and now ashamed that he once introduced Trump at a rally in Buffalo, where he then was the coach. What's happened here is that what was already an issue raised primarily by Colin Kaepernick has expanded beyond the specific point that Kaepernick was trying to make, which is a very valid point, and now has become near universal disgust with the president's insulting remarks.
Your friend Peter King noted that last week there were fewer than 10 NFL players who kneeled, who did some kind of protest. This weekend, depending on how you count it, 250, including entire teams. How significant is that to see a movement like that? I can't think of anything like that ever in the NFL.
No, but the president has galvanized players of all backgrounds, of all beliefs. Drew Brees, in his complete statement, says that he never would feel comfortable not standing for the national anthem. But he would stand locking arms with his fellow players, black and white, or with a hand on the shoulder of a black player who is expressing his point of view. And he pointedly said that he found the president's remarks inappropriate, which is kind.
I mean, you know, what's interesting is the president could have used this as a teachable moment to say, here's why I believe we should stand for the national anthem. Here's what I believe it stands for. But he took a different tact. And it has, I mean, look, we saw what that was happening with just the fans yelling at each other. You know, there is something contagious about divisiveness.
Yeah, and it plays in certain quarters. You stir people's emotions and resentments. That's actually a business plan in certain quarters of the internet or cable television. It's a business plan. And it's the way President Trump, for better or worse, approached his campaign and approaches his presidency. To give him the extreme benefit of the doubt, you'd say he's insensitive to the racial implications to make comments like this at a rally in Alabama. All right, he likes cheap applause lines,
which has no football team,
and he delivered them. Has no football, well, unless you count
football team.
Yeah, they're rabid football fans down there. That's to give him the extreme benefit of the doubt. But do you want a president of the United States who, even if you're giving him the benefit of that doubt, is so tone deaf to the racial implications of this?
It's interesting because this morning, one of the things the president has written, he writes, the issue of kneeling has nothing to do with race. It's about respect for our country, flag and national anthem. NFL must respect this. Now, if you take your tack there and say giving him the extreme benefit of the doubt, maybe for him, with the extreme benefit of the doubt, the issue of kneeling isn't about race. But for the players, especially the players initially, to say it's not about race, that's not true.
70% of the players in the NFL, roughly, are African American. Virtually every player who knelt in the initial stages of this was black, and the initial impetus from it, or for it, came from Colin Kaepernick, and it was about police brutality and mistreatment of African Americans. You can't separate those two things. Now, if you want to make the point that the national anthem is about something more than the nation's flaws and shortcomings, it's also about its ideals, and that people can see some texture to what the national anthem means, and you might prefer that people protest or make their point outside of the national anthem. That's something that can be argued. But the idea that this doesn't have something to do with race is preposterous. Michael Steele, African-American, former head of the Republican National Committee, was unsparing in his remarks about what Trump had to say. Bob Kraft, who contributed to the inaugural committee. You're not going to find many voices of support outside his base, his extreme base, for these remarks.
Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady,
right.
The quarterback, he said this morning, I believe it was, just this morning on a radio show, I certainly disagree with what he said. I thought it was divisive. Have we heard from Colin Kaepernick?
No, and I don't expect that we will.
Why
because
not?
He's been quiet for a long, long time. Sometimes he tweets some things out. I think it's actually a good thing that this has gone now beyond Colin Kaepernick, and I'll tell you why. But we have to give Kaepernick credit. First of all, taking a knee. The first game he sat, And then it occurred to him, maybe sitting seems contemptuous. Kneeling can be an act of grace. Tim Tebow knelt at various times. It can be an act of grace and an act of respect. But Kaepernick has, whether people know it or not, has raised and or donated millions and millions of dollars to worthy causes. He's walking the walk. He's involved in the community. But Kaepernick himself was an imperfect messenger. He's given to saying things like, I don't vote because the oppressor will never let you vote your way out of your oppression. So I guess it doesn't matter to him who wound up being president of the United States. It doesn't matter that when he first knelt, Barack Obama was president, and now someone who many of his fellow African Americans and, importantly, many of his fellow citizens of all races and backgrounds object to. It doesn't matter to him. Sometimes what Colin says when he does speak makes it sound as if, and I say this with great respect for his intentions and for what he has done beyond kneeling on the field, sometimes he sounded like someone who took one semester from a radical professor when he was a freshman, and that's all he knows about the world. So I think it's better that additional voices here from multiple backgrounds weigh in, because Colin Kaepernick, despite what some people want to say, is not the natural heir to Muhammad Ali or Arthur Ashe or to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who continues to be a public intellectual. He's not. He's tried to do a good thing from his heart. I don't know that he's equipped to carry that baton.
And whether or not he's the right person for it, he's being punished. I don't think there's any question that he has the talent to be playing football right now, and he's not.
Yeah.
Because of this.
He's better than some starters and better than most backups.
Let me ask you again about a lot of what the debate is about right now, because you hear it from the president, you certainly hear it from his cabinet, including Steve Mnuchin. I'm not sure we have that quote, but the Treasury Secretary went on TV this weekend and said, this isn't about race, it's about respect for the military and first responders. And when you kneel, you're disrespecting the military and first responders.
Part of what's happened is that sports and patriotism and the flag have been conflated to such an extent that people can't separate out any nuance. If you go to see Hamilton, which is about the founding of the Republic, no one says, wait a minute, don't raise the curtain until we hear the national anthem. When you went to see Private Ryan, no one said, turn off the projector, Saving Private Ryan. No one said, turn off the projector until we've had the national anthem. It's in sports where this stuff happens. Sometimes movingly, sometimes I'd submit cynically, because wrapping yourself in the flag and honoring the military is something which no one is going to object to. We all respect their sacrifice. We all honor their sacrifice. And yet, what it has come to mean is that the flag is primarily and only about the military. This is no disrespect to the military. It's a huge part of the narrative. But Martin Luther King was a patriot. Susan B. Anthony was a patriot. Dissidents are patriots. School teachers and social workers are patriots. And yet at Yankee Stadium, if we can shift sports, not only do they play the national anthem before the game, but they play God Bless America at the seventh inning stretch 81 times a year at home games. And in every case, they say, please rise as the Yankees honor a military guest. I have no problem with that. I stand every time I'm in the ballpark, no matter what it is, I stand. And I certainly respect the military person they bring out there. But there's never a school teacher. There's never a social worker. Patriotism comes in many forms. And what has happened is that it's been conflated with kind of a bumper sticker kind of flag waving and with the military only, so that people cannot see that in his own way, Colin Kaepernick, however imperfectly, is doing a patriotic thing. And so, too, are some of these other players.
What do you think this does this season for football? Do you think that it will hurt ratings?
No, I think it increases interest. Yesterday, every telecast, including Sunday Night Football on NBC, showed the national anthem. Generally speaking, and this is interesting, generally speaking, be it baseball, football, whatever, the networks try to cover the national anthem. They try to be in commercial. I've heard it in my ear where the producer says, wait a minute, they may still be in the anthem when we come out of this commercial. And sometimes they are, and then you're just quiet for the last few notes, and you note that the anthem has concluded. Now, people want to see the anthem. They're interested in it. How long it lasts, we'll have to wait and see. By the way, this is not as important, but in his comments in Alabama, Trump went on to say that they're ruining the NFL. There's not enough hitting. They're, I guess, sissifying the game. You wonder how many times people who believe that have themselves been hit in the head. The science is clear, and the more that science emerges, the more it will become clear that football and brain trauma are linked. It doesn't matter how much you like the game, they are linked. And to deny that is to live in a fantasy world.
When you hear people say that sports is about entertainment, sports is about distraction, sports is about something other than politics, politics shouldn't be in sports.
Largely true, but sometimes they intersect, inevitably. And to ignore it is to ignore the elephant in the room. When I commented about various issues, only occasionally on NBC, be it on football or during the Olympics, it was never during the action. It was never at the expense of the action and the drama. It was always in a little niche that was carved out when nothing else was going on in terms of the game itself. But you have to acknowledge these things and you have to address them. They're important. And very often, because sports appeals across demographic lines like nothing else, we live in a niche world. But the one thing that draws not only a large audience, but a varied audience, outside of the Academy Awards and the Emmys, I guess, the one thing that draws that kind of across-the-board interest is big sports events. And very often that's where these issues play themselves out.
I heard a little bit of relevant history yesterday that I think is important to just reiterate, and that is that before 2009, the players often weren't on the field for the national anthem. Something changed, and patriotism became a larger component of all of this, sometimes paid patriotism.
Yeah.
And so yesterday, what did you think of the teams that stayed in the locker room for the national anthem? They released statements saying, we believe in patriotism, we believe in our flag, we believe in our first responders, but they stayed in the locker room. What did you make of it?
I was okay with it, and I think what Mike Tomlin said, the coach of the Steelers, made a lot of sense. He said, we don't want our players to have to choose. They may feel one way, they may feel another, they may be apolitical. So we'll stay off. Villanueva, one of the players for the Steelers, who was an Army Ranger in Afghanistan, came out of the locker room and stood at the edge of the field, not on the field, but sort of at the lip of the runway that would lead to the field, with his hand over his heart. And that was his decision to make, and I would respect that too.
What crossed the line specifically, do you think? What broke the dam here?
Well, when you call people sons of bitches across the board, that offends everybody. White and black, they've stood shoulder to shoulder on those fields, in those locker rooms. What kind of a statement is that to make? And I don't think it's irrelevant that clearly the president had more passion and conviction for those remarks than he did when he finally got around, after equivocating, to distancing himself to some extent from white nationalists and neo-Nazis. He clearly had more fervor for this than for that.
What about those owners that were so poignant, actually? I mean, just the visual itself, just seeing the owners locking arms with the players, the owners, most of them white, locking arms there on the field. Do you think the players, the owners, most of them white, locking arms there on the field, do you think that this is a tipping point? Will Bob Kraft still support Donald Trump after this? Will these owners say different things now?
I can't read Bob Kraft's mind, but it's very clear that there's almost no one in the NFL who wants to support or rationalize the tone and content of President Trump's remarks. So where it goes from here, I'm not sure. Where I hope it goes, though, is that it's one thing to take a knee or raise a fist. It's your right, and there's a point here to be made. But I hope others follow Kaepernick's lead, not in some of the naive political statements he's occasionally made, but in getting involved in the community and actually doing things, which many NFL players already do, but it's just not spotlighted. It's not just the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever it may be. And I think it would, the reason why Kaepernick is an imperfect messenger is that you think about Muhammad Ali, a different time, and of course he was a transcendent figure, and he was so entertaining even when he was polarizing, people couldn't take their eyes off him. He was so charismatic and magnetic. But you need people out there articulating, as a few did this weekend, out there articulating, we love our country, we support the military, we know that most policemen not only are not guilty of misbehavior, but many of them are heroic and dedicated. Many of them are themselves African American or Hispanic, and they're dedicated to protecting and serving people of all backgrounds. We get that, but there is still a problem. And that problem of police brutality specifically is real, it's true, it's urgent, and because it's connected historically to the mistreatment of African Americans by government, by the justice system, and by the police, because it's connected, it resonates all the more. If people can make those distinctions and voice those distinctions rather than just kneeling or rather than just raising a fist, then the conversation's really on. And I hope it goes there.
It's hard to say all of what you just said on Twitter, which is, I think, one of the problems right now.
Yeah, that's
leadership in this country.
That's right.
It's a complicated, important discussion.
A world that plays its discussions out on social media is not a world of texture and nuance.
No.
Bob Costas, thank you for being part of the conversation with us.
Thank you, Allison.
Great to talk to you.
Thanks, Bob. We'll be right back. President Trump standing by his criticism of the NFL this morning. This is what he wrote just a short time ago. So proud of NASCAR and its supporters and fans. They won't put up with disrespecting our country or our flag. They said it loud and clear. Many people booed the players who kneeled yesterday, which was a small percentage of total. These are fans who demand respect for our flag. The issue of kneeling has nothing to do with race. It is about respect for our country, flag, and national anthem. NFL must respect this. With so much on the president's plate, North Korea, healthcare, U.S. islands devastated by Hurricane Maria. Why hammer this issue? Why now? Let's get the bottom line with CNN political analyst David Gregory and senior political writer for 538, Perry Bacon. Perry, let's start with you. Why now? What does the president get out of this morning?
I'm not totally sure why this started on Friday night and continued these last few days. I mean, one thing you know is he likes to punch back. So when Steph Curry suggested he wasn't coming to the White House, I was not surprised. Trump immediately said, you can't, immediately disinvited him. That's how Trump behaves normally. But I think it is an odd time to take these issues on when so much else is going on. On the other hand, look, health care reform doesn't look to be moving very much. Tax reform is sort of stuck right now as well. It's not as if Trump's agenda otherwise is moving very quickly, nor as if he was more involved in health care, it would necessarily pass. The president's gotten involved in health care at times throughout the year, and that has not unstuck that bill. So I think Trump is kind of playing on an issue where he probably has more political strength and more political support versus his health care bill is very unpopular, and he knows he can't move that issue as much.
David, how about that? The art of distraction at work here?
Well, but look, he's a highly distracted person in general and has been for a long time, and now he's president of the United States. So he can't resist kind of moving into the limelight, moving toward that light of controversy and division, really loving, it seems, to be in the middle of a fight that can tear at the social fabric of the country, to get into race relations, issues of hate, of police brutality, to get right in the middle of that and try to stoke it in a way that is so counterproductive, that not only unites the NFL in all of its diversity against what he did, but also is just so counterproductive to trying to tamp down some of the controversy involved in all of it. It's what he does. He did it in Alabama at a political rally, which has a double meaning because he's also there on behalf of an establishment Republican candidate who may very well lose, which would further hurt the president as he's perhaps going to lose on a health care fight yet again and is having so many other difficulties. I think all he knows is how to really to kind of stoke the factional divide in the country.
Perry, you work at 538. Math is politics and politics is math. It's hard for me to see how the president adds to his support from this. When you watched the NFL yesterday, shows like NFL Today or NFL Prime were speaking out against him. Those are shows that you would think, at least tacitly, would be supportive of him in the past. But Terry Bradshaw, Chris Collinsworth, Rex Ryan, a guy who introduced him at a rally, now speaking out against the president.
If you look at the math, Trump is in his approval ratings in between 35 and 40%. It's been there for a while, but is gradually going down. What I would say is this has been a base presidency. When I say that from the beginning, from January 20th forward, Trump has done very little to reach out to independents, reach out to Democrats, reach out to people who voted for Hillary Clinton. So in that sense, his behavior this weekend was not surprising, and that Trump seems to prefer as a political strategy to make appeals to his base, to ramp up his base, even if those things are going to irritate everyone else. I don't think Donald Trump is surprised that, you know, his tweets the last few days have irritated Democrats, irritated independents, irritated athletes. I think that is the sort of a feature, not a bug, of what he's doing.
Go ahead, David.
I just want to say, look, I mean, the other thing is there's always got to be accountability. If the president wants to take on these fights, he's going to have to be accountable for his own words and his own actions. He says it's not about race. He doesn't have a good record on that. This is the guy who rode to national political prominence on the back of a racist lie against Barack Obama. He wants to honor the flag and honor our military. This was the man as a candidate who impugned the heroism of John McCain, a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War. He's got to be accountable for things he's done and said while he'll take such a self-righteous stand. And then you have to recognize the hollowness of it.
Perry, what about that? I mean, David just set that up perfectly. When the president says that for him this isn't about race, this is about patriotism, how does that wash with you?
I think Bob Costas in your interview just said that really well. This whole started because Colin Kaepernick was protesting about police shootings and police brutality. If you looked yesterday, a lot of the athletes who were kneeling are black. 70% of the people in the NFL are black. It's just hard to say. I think what Donald Trump is saying is because he didn't say, I'm not bringing black athletes to the White House, therefore it's not about race. But the people he's in contest with, Kaepernick, Stephen Curry, are black people in majority black sports. So of course it's about race.
Look, and even if he says, and you can debate it because it is debatable whether or not his comments are about race, he cannot say the issue of kneeling has nothing to do with race. The kneeling issue began. Colin Kaepernick did it out of a racial protest. I mean, it's just factually true. This is about race from the beginning. Maybe, you know, he doesn't think so, but that's what it is, David.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. And at the same time, look, President Obama was drawn into this debate as well and made the point that it was going to be a divisive issue. You know, Colin Kaepernick and other players cannot take this step and cannot take a stand and expect that everybody is going to embrace them. Their First Amendment rights should be appreciated and respected, but not everybody's going to applaud because there are going to be people who see it as very painful if they have loved ones who have died for the flag, for what the anthem stands for. So that's going to be part of it. And again, a political leader, our president, has an obligation in these moments to try to bring some people together over this instead of to keep dividing people and to be a lightning rod that keeps dividing people.
Perry, it's interesting. In 2013, then Donald Trump, not yet president, sent out a tweet saying that President Obama shouldn't be weighing in on the debate over the Redskins' name. You know, basically he was saying presidents focus on, here's what he says, our country has far bigger problems, focus on them, not nonsense. Well, fast forward 4 years, and of course he's weighing in on this culture war, but it seems impossible, frankly, now that any president wouldn't have to weigh in on things like this. I mean, these are such a part of the national conversation. It seems almost naive to suggest that the president could just sort of float above it.
I think that's right, that the president has to get involved in a lot of issues that maybe are not political, and it's hard to sort of stick to politics or stick to sports or what have you. I would argue that I don't think this weekend, if Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders were president, would it happen this way exactly, though? I think the question is not, should you weigh in, but is there a way you can weigh in that is unifying and that is not divisive, or one that doesn't increase division? I mean, it's hard to imagine George Bush or Barack Obama disinviting someone from the White House, particularly someone like Stephen Curry or Steve Kerr, pretty unifying people who work for the Golden State Warriors. Those are not particularly controversial figures. So the idea that Donald Trump's reaction is first to disinvite people from the White House, something I don't think you would have seen with another person in the Oval Office.
So David Gregory, this is all happening in spite of, or maybe because of, this healthcare battle that continues to be waged in Washington right now that doesn't look promising, at least right now, for the Republicans, one vote away from the latest version of the repeal measure being killed. What changes over the next 3 days, do you think?
Well, I mean, incidents like this just, I think, deprive the president of yet more political capital because this is where he's putting his energy. But I think he's in many ways a bystander in this political fight over health care, as he's been throughout. There are Republicans who are trying to make this work. It appears to be hanging on by a thread. And even if it were to prevail, it would not get over that bar of being a unified, bipartisan piece of legislation, just as the Democrats had moved on it in a way that there were no Republican votes. So I think, this is a difficult time, and I think a lot of Americans would like to see the president focused on defusing a crisis with North Korea rather than wading this far into sports.
David, Perry, thank you very much. Great to talk to both of you. So the Trump administration unveiling new restrictions for travelers in 8 countries, North Korea and Venezuela, now among the new additions to the list, which stands to replace President Trump's controversial executive order. CNN's Jessica Schneider is live in Washington with all of the details for us. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Allison. Well, this ban will be a permanent replacement to what we saw over the summer. It begins October 18th, and that's when there will be new restrictions and in some cases an all-out ban on travelers from 8 different countries. They're as follows: Chad, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen. Now, there are some notable new nations on this list, in particular North Korea, as well as Chad and Venezuela. They've been added. So the administration may use those additions to bolster its argument that this is not a Muslim ban, as the past 2 executive orders have been criticized as. Now, these new travel restrictions are taking effect after the Department of Homeland Security spent the summer reviewing the way countries around the world vet their travelers, and those that don't have sufficient screening, they're now on that list. Well, President Trump weighing in, talking about this and tweeting overnight, in part saying, quote, "We will not admit those into the country we cannot safely vet." But of course, civil rights groups are out there crying foul, saying that even this new ban is just one part of the administration's, quote, ugly white supremacist agenda. Now, the legality of this latest version of the travel ban, it could take center stage on October 10th. That's when the Supreme Court is hearing arguments about the temporary travel ban that took effect over the summer. So right now, the DOJ is urging parties in the case to file additional briefs to address this latest travel ban. But it is important to note that this ban does not take effect until mid-October, and the restrictions will vary country by country. And John, people with valid visas or green cards from those 8 countries, they will still be allowed in this country. John?
All right, Jessica Snyder for us in Washington. Jessica, thanks so much. Hurricane Maria still churning in the Atlantic and coming uncomfortably close to North Carolina. Watches and warnings up now. We'll have the latest forecast next.
Time now for the 5 things to know for your new day. President Trump defending his criticism of the NFL in a string of tweets this morning. NFL players, coaches, and team owners defying the president in a show of solidarity, kneeling, locking arms, or staying in the locker room during the national anthem.
The White House revealing new travel restrictions for travelers from 8 nations, North Korea, Chad, and Venezuela now on the list. The rules vary by country and take effect October 18th.
Senate Republicans making revisions to their health care bill in hopes of winning over holdout senators. Republican leaders cannot afford to lose another vote.
The suspected gunman who killed 1 parishioner and injured 7 others at a Nashville, Tennessee church is due in court Wednesday. Churchgoers say Emmanuel Sampson used to attend the parish. No word yet on a motive.
Angela Merkel winning a 4th term as Chancellor of Germany, but her advantage in parliament has been cut, with the far-right Alternative for Germany party winning a surge of support.
But for more on the 5 things to know, go to CNN.com/New Day for the very latest.
Okay, Hurricane Maria is still churning in the Atlantic, and it is now threatening the North Carolina coastline. So let's check in with CNN meteorologist Allison Chinchar for the latest forecast. Where is it now and what's it doing?
Right, so the latest update that we just got in does show that the winds have decreased slightly down to 75 miles per hour. This still means it is a Category 1 hurricane. As it pushes off to the north, it's expected to continue to weaken. But because of how close it's expected to get to the East Coast, we have tropical storm watches and tropical storm warnings out for the east coast of North Carolina. The track of this will take it due north, just where it gets right about the level of Hatteras, North Carolina. And then it's going to take a sharp turn to the right and move away from the U.S. coast. However, just because this means we won't get a direct landfall doesn't mean we won't have some impacts from this. We've got this high pressure system out to the east. Believe it or not, it's Hurricane Lee that's going to break this high down and allow Maria to push off towards the east as the jet begins to get close. But John, the thing I want people to understand is dangerous rip currents are going to be stretching from North Carolina all the way to Massachusetts. And then more locally for North Carolina, you're going to have to deal with coastal flooding and tropical storm force winds.
So be very careful with that. Allison Chinchar, thanks so much. Federal officials say the search and rescue efforts will continue for weeks in earthquake-ravaged Mexico. It comes as the death toll climbs to 324 and hope fades for finding any more survivors. CNN's Ivan Watson live in Mexico City with the latest.
John, that's right. The search continues at this location. Before dawn, it was pouring rain. It stopped the hard work that the international team and dangerous work the international team of rescue workers have been doing here. There have also been aftershocks, strong earthquakes throughout the weekend that forced them to suspend their work. Meanwhile, relatives waiting for at least 40 missing people in this collapsed six-story building in an agonizing vigil, camping out day and night here. On Sunday, an adult woman, the body of an adult woman, was recovered from a collapsed school where at least 19 children were killed and 7 other adults were killed. The death toll growing. Over the course of the weekend, the dome of an old church collapsed, Our Lady of Angels Church here in Mexico City. As far as the recovery efforts, well, the government says it's trying to reopen schools now. It says 103 schools have been inspected and deemed safe for kids to go back to school, but there's still more than 9,000 still closed. It shows you what a hard road the city has ahead of it for overcoming this natural disaster. Allison?
Okay, Ivan, thank you very much for the update from Mexico. Meanwhile, Latin music superstars are raising money to help Puerto Rico recover from Hurricane Maria. Among them, singer-rapper Daddy Yankee. He is here. We will speak with him live about all of the relief efforts in Puerto Rico.
More misery for Puerto Rico. The entire island still without power. The governor is warning that a large dam is beginning to fail, forcing thousands to evacuate. CNN's Lila Santiago live in San Juan with the very latest. The governor thinks it's a matter of time. That's what he told me earlier, Layla.
Right. They are saying that they are closely monitoring that today. And I got to tell you, John, we actually were able to get over that area yesterday to kind of see what kind of water levels we're talking about. And when we landed our helicopter in that area, in a community that has seen no one since Hurricane Maria passed through Puerto Rico, the people there were telling me that if that dam breaks, that could be worse than the hurricane itself. When we landed, one woman just embraced me, not even knowing who I was, because she said I was the first person to come into that area, and they have no power. They have no communication. They aren't able to reach. Now, they did tell me they do have water, and for now they have food as well, but they hadn't even evacuated from the area where the government says more than 70,000 people need to evacuate. As we went to some other areas that are pretty remote as well, areas where I actually had to climb to get to homes where we were told there were people, it was the same thing over and over. No, we haven't seen any hurricane aid come in. We haven't seen any government officials here. And so I asked the governor about the western part of the island and figuring out how to get to these remote areas where the neighbors themselves are finding ways to clear out roads that are flooded, that have debris, so that help can get there. But right now, within the last 24 hours, that's the big takeaway, is that the aid has arrived. FEMA has brought in supplies, but it's not necessarily getting to those areas that are remote, that right now have no power, no communication, no way of knowing what's going on, in some cases beyond their very own home.
Layla, it's just all so heartbreaking. Thank you very much for the update from there. So, of course, we all know the record-breaking song of the summer, Despacito, by Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee, and it was filmed in San Juan's La Perla neighborhood. Well, that location has now been destroyed by Hurricane Maria. This is what it looks like today. Daddy Yankee is trying to help his native country, Puerto Rico, by raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for the recovery, and Daddy Yankee joins us now here. Great to have you here in studio.
Thank you for having me, Addison.
I mean, listen, everybody knows Despacito. It was the smash hit of the summer, and when you look at that video, you're in it. You filmed it there in the La Perla neighborhood. Maybe we can show it to everybody again. What is it like for you when you see what it looks like? This is it today versus that day that you filmed it.
I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I still live in Puerto Rico. So I know the struggle that we're going through right now.
How dire is the situation? When you talk to your friends and relatives at home, what do they tell you is happening?
It's devastation. We never seen something like this before. There's no power, no communication. The hospitals are running out of fuel. The patients, I just talked to the First Lady, and Beatriz Rosselló, she told me that the insulin, they're running out of insulin. So we're facing a major catastrophic scene.
It is just as desperate as you could ever imagine. I mean, the good news is that we spoke to the governor this morning on our program, who said that now relief flights are landing with food and water slowly. But I mean, I know that you're efforting getting more in there. Just last night, there was a big fundraiser for the Red Cross, and I know that you've contributed money. What are you trying to do?
I just trying to recollect the most as I can. I just donated $100,000 for the Red Cross. And also, I just matched $100,000 for Feed America, because Feed America has a strong structure in Puerto Rico. And I matched another $100,000 for them. And just like, we've been very aggressive. J-Lo just donated $1 million. I have $1 million as well to donate to Puerto Rico for different scenarios to rebuild the island, because I know that it's going to be a long way.
Yeah. If we could just play the video of Despacito again, just tell us what that day was like and what it has meant to you that this has taken off so much, that this video and this song is such a smash hit worldwide.
Oh my God, the song did a lot to Puerto Rico. The tourism went up because of the video and the song. And right now, looking at the video, and I know that the Perla that I knew yesterday is no longer there. It's touchy. I mean, we're really struggling right now.
Yeah, and I know that your fans are bringing food and supplies so that you can try to distribute it to Puerto Rico, because everybody's heart is so broken. We have some new drone video that I want to show you, because maybe you can just walk us through what we're seeing here. This is, the drones have been sent out. I mean, look, these are neighborhoods. I mean, look at, they're swamped. I don't know if you can, this is San Juan.
God,
I don't know if you know.
I was born and raised in San Juan, so we never seen something like this before. I mean, it's a catastrophe. It's total devastation, what we're seeing right now. And I talked to my mother, to my wife, and my daughters, and they told me they fine, but they never seen something like this.
So they're there. Your wife,
my family, my friends,
family, your kids.
I live in Puerto Rico, so I got to come back this week.
And so what are they? How are they? I mean, if this is San Juan, where they live, how are they coping with all of this?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know, because there's no communication, there's no power. I don't know. It's overwhelmed. I'm stressed out right now, because I got my neighbors, I got my family there, and we're suffering, and we need help. We need the federal government to be more active in this.
Yeah. How hard has it been to get a hold of your family? What have the communications been like?
Just text messages and just a couple of minutes. That's that I've been talking to them just like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, we have people on our staff who are having this same experience, and it's so unsettling when you can't get a hold of your, friends and loved ones. So what is your plan? I know that you're raising money. How are you going to get back to the Puerto Rico that you knew?
We got to understand one thing. Puerto Rico, before Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, we had 46% of poverty.
Yeah. You were already struggling. There was already a huge economic crisis.
We're under a crisis. So the question is, how are we going to rebuild an island that is bankrupt? It's impossible. We need help. We need American help. A lot of people don't know that Puerto Ricans are American citizens. It's good to educate everybody who's seeing me right now. We got soldiers that fight for this beautiful country, that have lost their loved ones and their families in this catastrophic situation.
Yeah, this has been a real awakening in terms of awareness about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans, and just America pulling together. Well, Daddy Yankee, thanks so much for being here. We wish you the best of luck. Obviously, we'll be following what happens in your home country, your homeland. CNN Newsroom with Poppy Harlow is going to pick up after this very quick break. See you tomorrow.